Hello and welcome to the Captain's Table, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Berserker01, Batman Shelley, your humble host and space bartender at the AstroPub, your space bar at the end of the universe. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. We got a good one for you. Specifically, the Captain's Table. This is the last Captain's Table of 2023, as it is being recorded on December 30th. And as kind of the last Captain's Table of the year, I wanted to kind of look forward into 2024 and look at what Star Citizen might be. Now, there's been I will say, a trend that was started by morphologists who said, I think 2 or 3 years ago, this won't be the year for Star Citizen. And that kind of terminology, is this the year for Star Citizen? I think it's stuck around a little bit. It's stuck in my brain, and I think it's stuck around in a lot of other people's ideas of like how to look at Star Citizen. Is this going to be the year of success, or the year of forward momentum, or the year of pyro, the year of the year of sorrow, and the year of pain? Sorry, Babylon 5 references.
Year of pain.
Yes. And so as a result, with I think especially since at the end of the ISC, the last ISC, Jared did go on to talk about many things which were planned for the first half of 2024, plus also discussed a kind of general gist of when they're going to be releasing Pyro, and which is summer of 2024. I should say 2023. I should say 2024. First half of 2024, and Pyro releasing in summer of 2024, which could mean a lot of things. But with that all being said, I want us to kind of look over and kind of think about it just from a perspective of the guests we have here. And speaking of the guests, let's start with Axis. Axis, who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen? Where can they find you?
07, everyone. My name is Axis0096. I go by the call sign Zyron in game, Star Citizen. I am a YouTube content creator as well as primarily Twitch. I am lowercase Axis0096 on Twitch and uppercase on YouTube. I've had difficulties, with picking usernames. It's kind of goofy, but those things.
What do you do in Star Citizen? What is your main focus in Star Citizen?
Primarily, right now, I'm a salvager, but I also like FPS and exploring.
Okay.
So the new content this year in particular definitely has expanded the exploration front a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely see so, especially with contents coming out in next year too.
Exactly.
All right, and Red J, who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen, and where can they find you?
I am Red J. I have a presence on YouTube. You can look me up on YouTube. Just go Red J Star Citizen. Pretty much will find me. I do everything from ship reviews, exploration type gameplay videos, and also in lore, I try to do dramatic readings of a lot of the official CIG lore posts and adapt them for spoken word. So greatly appreciated to be here. I look forward to 2024. Very excited.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I've kind of mentioned this before, but I listen to Red J's dramatic readings. They're very good. You should too. If you enjoy lore and you want to hear like from the source, but you're like, because I know a lot of my audience is very much I don't like reading, but I do enjoy audiobooks. It's like Red J is literally the audiobook of lore. You want to hear all of the lore directly as it was written, Red J will read it in dramatic form for, even adds in some sound effects every so often. So like to kind of give it more of a flair and such. So.
Yes, and sometimes I'm also working on some of the characters, like the host of Tracker.
Yeah.
Welcome to and also I'm looking forward to Hurston if they'll ever do more on the family, because Constantine Hurston of the Hurstonomic Hurstons, and I would love to do some more in character stuff, adapting to those things. So,
yeah, I mean, that's just my bane with CIG is like they have all these interesting characters and they do nothing with them. It's like you have them right there.
Family's enormous.
It's huge, and there's so many cool things about the Herstons they could do from. But I mean, like they have TC Pacheco, who's really cool and has good backstory, but they do nothing with her.
Yeah.
They have the creepy guy who always gives me the willies. Oh gosh,
Guy from Dumpers Depot.
yeah, the guy who's like, oh, terrible air quality today. Yeah. Gosh, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but yeah, you've got him. You've got the one mercenary I always forget the name of, but his name begins with an S. And then you've got the guy who runs the bar in Microtech, who we have in game, but has nothing even started it. Clovis Darneely, thank you, Coffee Gaming.
I'll raise you one.
Mm-hmm.
I'll raise you one. The founder of the Greys during either the first or second Tavaran War.
Yeah, Locke. Yeah.
And we know nothing about them except, they founded a mercenary outfit.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that CIG writes that they just kind of don't follow through. If I'll say one thing about 2024, that is my hope for 2024, is more character dynamic in that kind of building. But with that all being said, let's start off with what excites you about 2024. And Red J, since you were the last person to introduce yourself, we'll start with you. What excites you about 2024 for Star Citizen?
I think a lot of the ship backlog being taken out is certainly high on my list. But even higher is the outpost development, starting to see the baby steps of player outpost. And the other thing I'll cap it off with is any type of steps toward persistent hangars, such as cargo elevators and getting subscriber gear back, stuff like that, all kind of rolling together.
Awesome. Axis, what excites you about 2024?
I echo the same thing, because the backlog this year took a significant hit. We got rid of, long-term ships like the SRV, the X series, we know the G12s are probably going to be rolled out. The Apollo is being worked on. The Polaris is being worked on, which may end up being our second capital ship, I think, after the 890 jump in game.
Oh, yeah. That's
so. What else am I forgetting? There's so many large ships, and that frees up resources for other areas. And then we have the Idris, which is kind of more interesting because of a rumored mission that's floating around, but like most rumors, I'd prefer confirmation,
Yeah. All right. I will say, generally speaking, for 2024, I'm excited for, like I said, like Red J said, and I think Axis echoed, which is, I think, very about cargo missions. Like, cargo missions have been one of those things, and cargo kind of gameplay evolution has been one of those staples of Star Citizen. Like, at one point, they thought about calling Star Citizen something to the effect of like Star Traders was one of the proposed names for Star Citizen. So like trading has always been an important like aspect of Star Citizen's gameplay. And so having persistent hangars or elevators or anything kind of stuff, that's all I think very important to me for 2024 that it should be making it in. Now, I'll start with you in this next one. Axis, what worries you about 2024? When we're going into 2024, what are you afraid of that might happen in the future?
Well, I think the no dates thing, with regard to the last ISC, they kind of put a soft date on, a massive update, obviously.
4.0?
With pyro and jump points. My concern is that they're going to rush that. That's my real concern, because we understand that it's important to get to that mindset, but we also, to that area to get it done. But it's a lot of resources go into preparing 4.0.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm worried about them running into a brick wall like we did 318.
So you're worried about a repeat of 318?
Really, yeah, like a cascading effect.
Okay, yeah, because I mean I agree. Like 318 it was very obvious that 318 slowed development down significantly from March till probably like July or August. It seems like CIG
Yeah.
basically stopped because they had to work on a bunch of stuff to fix 318. 318 basically ruined like 3 to 6 months worth of work for CIG.
It
So
destroyed it. It
yeah.
literally did.
Um,
That's my real concern.
just is that 4.0 might do the same thing again, like a repeat of 4.0 of 318.
Yeah, or worse.
Red J, what are you concerned about with 2024? What are things you're not looking forward to, or just worried that might happen?
Well, there's one far off, unlikely one, but it is a major thought in the back of my mind. I hope doesn't happen. And it's if Squadron was set to release in late 2024, early 2025, whenever it is. I'm not saying that's the point of this episode, but if it was coming up at some point, and then all of a sudden tons of resources had to fix a glaring issue in there, like, oh, a mission's completely broken or whatever it is, and suddenly the fire hose of development resources that's being sprayed at Star Citizen was suddenly pulled back, so they had to pull their plans back. I know that's far-fetched. I barely even want to say it. I don't want to speak it into the ether so it'll happen type of thing.
Yeah,
But it
knock on
could.
wood. Yeah, I get what
Yeah,
you're saying.
I'll knock on the IKEA particle board I got right here. But the other thing that's more likely is if they get bogged down in the details with the ships. So we saw with the Santok Yai, they had some simple issues like a console that set it back a whole patch cycle. And then the Santok Yai still has the broken guns that Yogi's working on, that publicly his team's working on, said. So that's an example of like, if we have multiple ships that are being pulled out of the backlog quickly and they're all got broken parts or broken overpowered or undertuned or overtuned equipment, we may get bogged down in those details. So I hope with all the resources and with all this work going in that I know it'll work out, but it's just a question of how far out are we talking?
Okay. I think my big concern is slippage. Because Jared said we're shooting for 4.0 in summer, I think my biggest fear is that 4.0 doesn't come out next year. Because I think that would do a lot more damage to Star Citizen. Not necessarily like irrevocable damage. Because like, they're still going to do some big updates that are going to improve the gameplay overall. But I think the gameplay updates they're going to be bringing in the first half of the year are going to complement with the release of Pyro. So when new players come back, be like, oh, cool, the game is advanced, even though like, your average Star Citizen player knows that Star Citizen is evolving all the time. But to your average gamer, with their very, very, very pale skin and a fear of baths, the stereotypical like a casual gamer, they don't see progress unless new system come in. And I have a fear that like if CIG slips with 4.0 and it doesn't make this year, that could do a lot more of the, it's Star Citizen doing Star Citizen again. When's Pyro coming out? Never. and like
the whole
like,
reputation hit again.
Yeah. Another one of those, which is just kind of because that doesn't, and I know it seems weird, but that's not just an issue with Star Citizen, with like fans or content creators and like the community in general, but it's also and a hit to like the like morale of the CIG developers. So that's kind of what I fear. And in similar mind, I'm afraid that Squadron 42 might release this year and may follow that trend of other AAA releases like Cyberpunk and Starfield and so many other games which were released, and it's like this was released too early. It was released, there's too many bugs or there's problems with it, like there's fundamental issues with the game. But CIG feels the pressure to publish, and so they just push it out rather than, taking the time they need to polish it and get it ready to go. I don't think either of those are realities, but there are still fears that linger in my brain, which lingers with a lot of stuff like that. So, all right, with that, I think what was the next one we're going to talk about? I mean, we'll just talk about 4.0. I think that's the next big thing to kind of go over. And I'll say this: there's as always when CIG says something, or when anyone CIG says something, the joke becomes 2 years, 3 years, whatever. Like people begin to they just don't believe CIG when they open their mouths and they say a date. They go, they're going to miss that date. It's going to be. I've seen people who legitimately say 4.0 is not coming out until 2027. Because they're just like, it's just an impossible date. It's impossible for them to do. So the question I have for both of y'all, and I'll start with Reggie on this one, is it possible that 4.0, or do you think that 4.0 will come out this year?
I believe so. Do I think it's going to be screeching in like December?
Last minute,
like,
touch home base at December 31st or December 31st at 10 p.m. kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. And I think some of the server folks from CIG would nod if they heard that. I think they'd be like, yep. But I think they can pull it off. And I do think, though, you might have a little bit of a tuning of what exactly is in 4.0. You know, I'm sorry to add that little addendum, but...
Like, it may not be the full 4.0 experience that we hope for.
I think that the central pieces will be there. But we saw with the Pyro preview, they gave us, quote, Pyro, end quote, but it was the inner planets and it wasn't all the POIs and it was one working station. It could be a situation where it's like, look, we're going to give you it, but it's going to have, you know, Ruin Station, Checkmate Station, and, you know, the inner planets are going to be nailed down, but the outer planets only have like the initial POIs. Honestly, this might be a topic for a whole day, but like I kind of would be okay with that if depending on what, you know, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Axis, your thoughts? Or do you think it's coming out this year?
I'm like Red Jay. I think it might be basically along the same lines as, you know, Pyro preview, maybe 60%, 70% of assets, maybe. Along the lines of it. It'll be somewhere in the middle. You know, Pyro preview, what was there, maybe some of the stuff for the outer planets. But remember, the planet content team has probably moved on to another system now. So any glitch or terrain issues with the outer planets or any of the other planets will probably be sorted probably next year. I'm just cautioning people venturing into Pyro. You know, anything like open the maw of the land, kind of swallow your character holes. Yeah.
Can I have one little? Sorry.
Sure, Roger.
Sure.
When you build a commercial facility, right? Like speaking of a mall or something like that.
Yeah.
You build a full scale site. And you start your anchor stores, they're called. Back in the day, that's what they were called for decades. I don't know if it's still a thing, but
I think it's still called anchor stores. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, your
the things
Sears
that bring the people in. Yeah.
Yeah, they're your draw. If they can get those anchor stores right and the look and the feel and the service is right, the rest of it'll just fill itself in. And as long as they got that interplanetary system where, okay, I can go to the jump gate and I can on the server system, I can go to the next system. That to me is a major watermark. That's the 4.0 experience to me.
Okay.
Yeah. I can admit that. Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to add, Axis?
Yeah, I agree with Shemp. He's pretty much guessing what the next system will be because we know it's waiting in the wings because Levski.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, beyond 4.0, it will be Nyx, and this is the thing. Pyro's a test for a more complicated system than that. Nyx is going to be a much easier to produce system, like we've discussed several times, Paul. Even if they reassess Nyx to needing a couple more planetary bodies, it's going to be way easier because it's more bare. Pyro
It's
has
supposed to
had
be.
to undergo massively change,
Yeah.
from a dead, lifeless system to what it is now.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think the best way of putting that is that Pyro was supposed to be a dead lifeless system when you couldn't land on planets, and when CIG reassessed Pyro, they wanted it to be fun, and so they were like, we need to change some of the backstory because the game has changed since 2016, so we need to like improve that. But when you know, and because it's the second system in the game, but thinking about Nyx versus Pyro, for those of you who don't know, Nyx, I believe, is the Greek goddess of night. So, like, there's a reason why it's called Nyx. Like, CIG's naming conventions is very Games Workshop-esque. When you go Pyro, oh, why is Pyro named Pyro? Oh, because it's very, it's very like the star is very explosive, right? No, because the company that founded it was Pyrotechnic Amalgamated. It's like, really? This is a Land Raider made by Ark and Land kind of situation. Like really, you just have to invent. You're just going to invent with with names.
In the lore, they mentioned that Nyx is shrouded in a dense nebula.
That's what I was going to say.
So it's going to be very different.
Yeah, it's a dark nebula. So it's like it's not like a dark matter nebula, but it's like the idea being that it's the whole idea is that it's very hard to see with sensors. So you don't need to have large planets with livable atmospheres in Nyx because the aesthetic of Nyx is night. It's literally the name. Like CIG kind of puts it. It says it is what it says on the tin, kind of thing. So
if you I say if you want a taste of what Nyx will be, go to the deepest corners of Stanton right now and into the dust clouds.
Yes.
Because the bluish green ones are probably about as close as you're going to get to the starlight in Nyx. They're very dark, very shadowy.
Yeah, and like Levski itself on Delamar is on the very edge of that. So it's like on the visible edge of that, where like it's not in the clouds, but it's just on the outside of the clouds, so you can kind of get there. But most of the system is going to be covered in darkness, a shroud of darkness. And yeah, I think your good point of that, which is just like that's going to be easier for them to do because a lot of it is set. So Pyro is a little bit more difficult, and as a result. Well, I guess what both of you are saying is that as long as it's an established, as long as they get it established, it'll be good, right? Rather than trying to do everything at once. So, and I agree. I think 4.0 will probably make it in, and I think 4.0. I've heard this before where people say, well, 4.0. They call the joke that it's called Red Stanton. It's just going to be Stanton, but a different system. And I've heard people say this, and people have asked me this. I remember talking with Mike about it, and Mike asked me, "Are you okay with it just being what we have now, but in Pyro?" And my response is always, when Pyro comes out, Star Citizen will have been advanced. We won't have the same stuff we have right now as we're speaking in 2020. Right now in 2023 on December 30th, Star Citizen 3.22 is not. It's not like we're going to go. Pyro is going to be released and it's going to go back 5 years to what we have. We had 5 years ago. It's going to be whatever we have at the time in Stanton and Pyro. So, like, for me, that's okay. Like, that's fine. And as Red J points out, like the anchors, if they have the faction system, which I think is critical to Pyro's success, it's one of its kind of unique flares. They have the faction system. They have faction locations like faction headquarters. I forgot the name of it. There's like a settlement in Bloom. I think it's Bloom. That's like the head of the Citizens for Pyro. And then each of the stations have their own leaders. Like Ruin Stations, is head up by Xenothreat, and several of the stations are run by Rough and Ready. There's a barracks somewhere in Bloom, which is the head of the Fire Rats. So like. An old Pyrotechnic Amalgamated barracks. So like each of them have their own sort of headquarters, and if they all have their own like bases of operation, and then faction plus the like the solar flares and just being there, they can go back. They have people at the Naboo team that can just sit there and chunk out like new settlements and other content that they need to add into Pyro.
Yeah.
They can backfill Pyro if they need to, as long as it has that solid gameplay to start with. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I do think that they're going to make it. I'm afraid that they might tap home base at December 31st at 11:59 when it comes to the 4.0 release. But I do have a strange optimism that CIG might actually finally hit what they say. I don't think we're going to see, when Jared said we're going to see they're shooting for Pyro, summer for Pyro, that doesn't mean the beginning of summer. I think that means September for those of you, or August for those of you who are watching this after the fact, right before CitizenCon, which kind of tracks. So,
Yeah, it sounds about right.
yeah. So, all right. With that all being said, if we take a look at the list, I'm going to read down this list, and I'll ask you if you think they can get some of these. So these are the list of everything that's coming in next year, at least in some form, according to CIG. Clouds and fog additions and improvements, backpack reloading, beards, character creator upgrade, freight kiosk, new in-game apps for like shopping, distribution centers, diverse hair options, Mobiglass update, EVA T2, dynamic crosshair, master modes, freight elevators, loot screen upgrade, player interaction systems upgrade, scope improvements for like scopes and for weapons, visor and lens system, the star map upgrade, Volt weapons, weapon wear and tear, 20 new hairstyles, combat AI improvements, derelict settlements. Let's see some of these. Weapon recoil, Alpha 4.0, actor status T2, with things like radiation. The Aegis Idris, armor improvement specialization, audio system upgrades, base building, blood, sweat, and tears, cargo diversification, crafting, DLSS, FSR, CIG, FSR, engineering gameplay, fire extinguisher, fire hazard, FPS scanning, radar and ping, global illumination, improved planetary scattering, interactable updates. I'm not done, by the way, chat. Land claims, maelstrom, NPC traits and affinities, planet tech improvements, reputation T2, restraints, WeWork PvE interactions, scanning update, SFX updates for ships, weapons, and being more realistic, skill system, possibly, sliding, starcloth, star hair, terrain to GPU, Vulcan improvements, and water interaction upgrade. That is a long list of all of those things. So, with that being said, if CIG manages to do all of that, or even just, let's just say half of that, do you think that this next year will be, as Jared said, will be the watershed year for Star Citizen? Axis, will start with you on this one. Do you think it will be the best year for Star Citizen next year?
If they can at least get the star map, I'm going to say this, and chat will agree with me. If they can at least get the star map, some loot screen upgrades in the freight elevators, and maybe the EVA system, I'm thinking this will be a decent year. I mean, base building at that point would be a cherry on top. Everything else after that would be cherry on top.
Okay. So if they manage to get all of those in there, do you think this would be the best year for Star Citizen?
I think it would be the best year probably for 5 years. Probably.
Okay.
Because, yeah.
Okay. All right, Red J. Do you think, first off, how likely do you think any of those are going to actually make it in?
I winced a little bit when you said that last bit. I think about half of it's going to make it in.
Okay.
And I think, yes, I do agree it's a watershed year, as Jared said. Is it the best year ever for Star Citizen? I think it would be the best year yet.
Okay.
I'm going to addendum it with that. So I know that's a cheat, but I'm going to say it that way. And I just don't see it any other differently way. Yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest things is even like the new hairs and stuff. Like they didn't
Mhm.
just show it off at CitizenCon. They rolled out what they had ready now. And
Yeah.
I hope that continues with a lot of this stuff on this list. It's overwhelming even when you said it. But if they can just roll it out when it's ready and we gonna get a taste of it, be able to start testing it, be able to start experiencing it, it's no longer just on a list somewhere. It's just, oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's that thing we're working on, and we already got the first iteration of it.
Yeah, I also and point out things like beards, character creator updates. That's the same thing. Like the character creator and beards are coming together. In-game apps like with shopping and stuff like that, with the Moby Glass options and with the maps, like all of that is the same thing. So like that list of things sounds impressive, but you could probably like if I went through this again and kind of combined a bunch of this stuff, I could probably combine it down by maybe by half of what we see here. But yeah, each of these are technically individual stuff that they're working on. So, I will say, in my opinion, I think this is going to be a watershed year for Star Citizen, but I don't think it'll be the best year for Star Citizen. I think to a degree, I'm with Red J that if they get like 4.0 out on top of any of the stuff that they want to get, even for the first half of the year, then it will be the best year for Star Citizen yet. But I think things like multiple systems, the dynamic economy, more players, like all of those sorts of things will probably improve player overall the experience and make it that whatever year that happens the best year of Star Citizen. But yeah, I think it's definitely a watershed year. I'm hesitant to say it's going to be the best year because, as Axis brought up earlier, 318 was a much hyped game improvement, and CIG sprinted full speed into 318 and at 20 miles an hour it smashed into a brick wall, and it broke every bone in Star Citizen's body, and they had to replace it over 6 months and to actually make it function. Even though 318 as a patch was fantastic in terms of the stuff it added and all of the other things that were added, none of the things matter if you can't play the game. So.
True.
It's one of those problems. So when I heard Jared say a bunch of that list of stuff of coming in first half of the year, at first I was like, I don't like that list because that list sounds impressive, but 318 was impressive until it released. So yeah, yeah, that would be my opinion on it. So I think it'll be a watershed year, but I'm hesitant to call it the best year of Star Citizen. As for will it be the year of Star Citizen? I think it depends on what your perspective is. If you think Pyro is the most important thing, I think yes, it will be the year for Star Citizen. If you think more players in Star Citizen is going to be the thing that makes Star Citizen the year. I don't know. I don't know if they'll increase the player cap necessarily, but we'll see. I think it depends on your perspective and your focus in Star Citizen. So, all right. I'll ask the very last question before we go into the question and answer session. So I'll start with you, Red J, on this one. Are you excited for 2024?
Oh, absolutely. But I'm notorious for being an optimist.
How about you, Axis? Are you excited for 2024?
I'm cautiously optimistic, but excited. Yes.
I will say I wouldn't say cautiously optimistic. I would say I am recklessly optimistic, if that makes sense. Like I don't want to hype. I don't think I'm not going to hype any of these features because I got to see them in game before I actually like kind of see if they're good or not. Because CIG is also very good at adding things which are terrible additions to the game that they then take away and kind of fix. But I think all of my internal like self is saying, don't trust all of this. This is a lot of this is probably CIG being optimistic themselves, but part of me, because of CitizenCon and seeing what they showed off, being like, yeah, it's just porting it from Squadron. It's not going to take them two years to port it from Squadron when they just need to give it a new, fresh UI coat of paint and connect it to the systems for Star Citizen. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but it's easier than it would have been if they had to build it from scratch. But
especially with all those devs from Squadron at the very moment anyway,
Who
able
built
to
it?
work on it.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
people who built
literally
the
able.
new UI are going to be there. So
It excites me even the thought of like the crews that like worked on it and they're walking over and they're over the shoulder of the teams that were working on the team and the PU and just going, no, that's how it goes. That's how you do it. Being able to those two SMEs being able to connect that it's very exciting times for those teams.
yeah, definitely.
think I think one of the biggest problems is people get overhyped for something and then it doesn't happen. I
Mhm.
mean, we had a problem like this even before 318 with the Banu Merchant Man.
Mhm.
You know, the development team got so far along on the concept, and then most of them had to drop the project or, they went on to other things. And now they're having to start from square one on that ship, which took a ton of resources from other aspects of the game. And a lot of people weren't happy about that.
Mhm. Yeah. And
I mean,
I see what you're saying as well. It's like it can still be a problem, and especially what Red Jay had said earlier about their fears for things. So, but yeah, I think all of us will say we're at least optimistic that 2024 will be a better year than 2023, which is partially optimistic and partially pessimistic because the first 9 months of 2023, some people couldn't even play the game. So, if everyone can play the game in 2024, it'll automatically be better than 2023. But
I would settle for simply a slightly higher player count.
yeah, there we go. All right. So again, as always, make sure you're checking out Red J on their YouTube page, youtube.com/@RedJ. Make sure you check out Axis on Twitch and YouTube under Axis0096. It's capital A in YouTube and it's lowercase a in Twitch. You can find him in game Zirin. And if you enjoyed this so far, make sure you hit that follow button on Twitch, and subscribe on YouTube, and hit that little like button. Comment down below. We're going to take a few minutes. I'm going to grab something to drink. I'm going to let these folks use the restroom, do everything else they do. And then when we come back, we'll be taking questions from the chat, specifically for the guests, to kind of go through the question and answer session. So thank you. Hold on. We'll be right back. Thank you for watching so far. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the question and answer session. I'm still with Axis and Red J. The topic we discussed earlier was kind of will this be the best year, the watershed year, a watershed year for Star Citizen in 2024? So now we're getting to the question and answer sessions. The first question comes from YouTube. I saw that a little earlier. So if you ask the question on YouTube, you may have to ask it multiple times because the chat goes by pretty quickly and I don't have a system set up for it yet. From Radar Echo, friend of the show, who asks, given that Alpha is meant to develop key mechanics, do you expect science or exploration mechanics before 4.0? Red J, what do you think? Do you think we're going to see science or exploration mechanics before 4.0?
Exploration mechanics, yes. It's a question of how mature they will be.
Mm-hmm.
I'll stick with the exploration because that's what I'm pretty adept in. So we explored everything from the jump points down to like different new technology. Just tonight, me and my another content creator, Toast, we were exploring some of the new locations over at Cloudview Rest, and we found like a bouncing ball, a gym, a whole gym with a boxing area and a healed location. And I mean, to me, that is exploration. So why I brought that up is, what is exploration gameplay to you? So that's a fair question. So I know you might be saying like, well, wait a minute, that's not official. And that doesn't involve finding data to sell and things like that. And that's where I get into the maturity of exploration. It starts to me with having these gameplay loops that are undiscovered content and things to find. And then it starts maturing into, well, how does that tie back into a contract that you can make money off of, or things to find that you can use as status symbols or something like that, like reputation, whatever that may look like.
Sorry about that.
Access, same question for you. Do you think we're going to see exploration and like discovery, the sort of, we're looking at getting specifically what it said. Science or exploration mechanics before 4.0. Yeah.
We kind of already do at current outposts because you can explore them, the incoming settlements, you can explore them for resources and such, which to me is rather new. I mean, it wasn't even in a patch or two ago. You could go in and get harvestables, which for years you had to go out in the field and get, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of like real science, like the Endeavor telescope or whatever, we don't have enough back in for that just yet.
Okay. I go ahead. What are you gonna say? I mean,
I'm just saying it's going to be the level of low-end science. I mean, maybe scooping soil.
Yeah.
For some, basic stuff. It's not going to be high-end stuff.
Yeah, I wonder if we're even going to see that. I do think, though, we may see scanning and map production. I've said this for years now, which is I always think that a lot of people romanticize exploration in science gameplay in Star Citizen, because a lot of people are like, oh, science exploration, I'm going to go to a brand new world that no one's been before and study it and all these sorts of things. And the answer is no. What you're probably going to do is you're going to go to a place like Hurston. You're going to land. You're going to take a little, because it's Beam Citizen, you'll take your beam science tool out and you'll beam the ground and touch the temperature of the ground and the moisture, and you'll take all that information and you'll plug it into a computer somewhere that will give you some money for it, so you can get the idea of what the soil compression were, or what the oxygen output of this plant is. And then the other type of thing is you're just going to use a scanner and go to an area that already exists and people already travel through and scan it and update maps. And you take that updated data back and you sell it back to, the ICC seller surveyors, and they pay you a little bit of money for it. But it's mostly just map making. And I think the majority of science and exploration is just going to be map making.
I mean, who here has played Elite? That was the biggest draw for Elite Dangerous, was going out in the black.
Mm-hmm. And
scanning systems, planets, and maybe even known ones, but doing a thorough scan of stuff.
And with CIG's, like with they kind of just announced it at CitizenCon, where you can like get a map of an area that you haven't been before and upload it to your mobiGlas, that implies that you can make maps and sell them to other people for like, so the map won't be completely filled in. You'll have a very basic view, and as things change, maybe a new outpost is added here or somewhere there, then your scans can be added to those maps, and those maps can improve over time.
And that would be one of the first cooperative things for orgs. So org to org being able to share joint maps and stuff and intelligence.
Yeah, but my point is that when it comes to like science and exploration gameplay, I think a lot of people have these sorts of idealistic versions of it, when really it's like you're doing what the Star Trek Enterprise does at the beginning of every episode of Next Generation. You're either delivering medical supplies or scanning a nebula to update maps. Like, that's what you're doing. You're scanning to update information. You're not going to boldly go and find new jump points and all that sort of thing. Your day-to-day mundane gameplay is go to a region of space, turn your scanners on, scan for anomalies. No anomalies found, go back and turn it in. Every so often you find an anomaly, and that might be, oh, look, it's like a little comet. You go scan it a little bit for resources and come back. And sometimes it's exciting, like a derelict ship that wasn't there before, and it's filled with a mystery. But I don't think that's going to be every single time you try to play that game. So, yeah.
One thing regarding exploration that's not in-game for Stanton, at least, is this Bayer comet. It's mentioned in lore. And I don't know about you, but comets have long elliptical orbits.
Yeah.
All the planets in Stanton are circular, so it's not gonna... It's hard to make ellipses interesting, for gameplay, because comets are hard.
Yeah.
From what I've heard Jared say.
Yeah, they're not. It's not easy to do that. There are some elliptical orbits in lore, and I think that they have some elliptical orbits for moons. I want to say there's something that's like a slightly off for some of them, but it's not easy for them to do a lot of that stuff. But the idea being, like, I do think we will have science or we'll have exploration. Maybe not science, but I think the exploration is going to be scanning, because they've talked about, they released the Scout. And they've talked a little bit about how, like, scanning's going to thing. They just didn't have it for whatever reason ready for CitizenCon. It's almost certainly going to be in Squadron. It's one of those things. It's like, it's probably the last big mystery of Star Citizen gameplay, because we kind of have an idea of everything else. But like scanning, because it also feeds into bounty hunting and science and so many other things, is like long range scanning is going to be is a big question mark as to how it will actually look. So. A circle is an eclipse, but we're talking about like extreme eclipse, like ellipse. We're talking about extreme ellipse, like very flat circle, as it were, is harder to
like
do
a long
for them.
Squished ellipse,
And they need to have actual orbits in order for comets to be interesting, because they'd have to actually fly. They have to be out of the system and
heat up, melt stuff, and then get cold.
Yeah, and they have to have that traversal for you to be like, oh, this comet hasn't been discovered before, because if it's just sitting there, everyone's going to be able to find it. So, all right,
I'm sorry about that, Paul.
You're good. Radar Echo said. Let's see, what did he say earlier? I think the original scope of science was component tuning. Is that no longer the case? I think component tuning is dead, because it's being replaced by the new crafting system with blueprints and stuff like that. I think component tuning is gone the way of the dinosaur, because of crafting has replaced it, which is good and bad. But I could also still see, because CIG loves their beams, I could see a science beam. You got a nice little gun that shoots science rays at the ground, and it tells you science things. It's just a tricorder, but it's gonna have to have a beam with it, because otherwise, how do we know it's working if we don't have a beam that shoots out? Beam Citizen. Even
if they turn around and they do that, they get rid of overclocking modules and such. Yeah. The workbench that was in the hangar, the hangar module.
Crafting. Yeah,
they'll just turn it into crafting. The Carrick's room for engineering will go to crafting, and the Endeavor's super collider will just become like a super crafter that will just be for specific items that are better.
And the super collider can also be for science, for do certain experiments and stuff like that. It's just a fancy science beam that you can do at certain locations or something. So,
Particle collider weapon.
yeah. Maybe it's key to making some sort of super weapon in the future. So
maybe who knows.
All right. Next question comes from Zarek Masters, who says Invictus, IAE Invictus, the ships coming out according to CIG in this order: Polaris military, Galaxy multi industry, Perseus military. So does it make more sense for Polaris in May, but is it really 5 months away? It makes more sense for Polaris. I think what Zarek is saying is that it makes more sense for the Polaris to come out in Invictus, but is it really 5 months away? I don't know. I mean, honestly, because it's just now in white box. It's been in white box for a couple of months now. And it could be pretty quick turnaround. It could maybe not be. It's hard to tell at this point. I think we have to know more information about it and next year before I would be able to sit there and go, yeah, it's definitely 5 months. But as always, I would err on the side of caution and say, I think based off of its current trajectory, I could see it be coming in, but just in IAE next year rather than Invictus. But it could be. It's just hard to tell right now. Axis, what do you think? Do you think we're going to see the Polaris by Invictus or by IAE?
It really depends on how far along the ship team is on the white box. Because remember, when we last saw it in the Inside Star Citizen, what was it, 3 months back, 4? On the updated white box, that was filmed probably a month or two ago, beforehand, before CitizenCon.
Yeah.
So we're talking 6 months further back. So they could already be in getting it. God, what is it? Okay, it's white box, gray box,
Lot 0, LOD
Lot
0, and then final.
They could be in Lot 0 now.
That's true.
Without even telling us.
Because we don't have the last 2 monthly reports. So like we don't know how far they're along. I think the last they talked about it, they were very brief about it in CitizenCon. They just kind of mentioned it. So I don't know. What do you think, Red J? Do you think we're going to see the Polaris in Invictus or IAE next year?
I think it's a thermostat to tell us how well the year's going to go.
Okay.
If we see the Polaris at Invictus, which is where it belongs, really, then we know that things are going smooth the way they're going. Because that's what I would do. I would not even consider it's a no-brainer. It'll sell like hotcakes, like it already has, even more so.
Yeah.
The biggest elephant in the room, though, for the Polaris is I would not launch the Polaris without PDSs working and installed on multiple types of ships that'll be its prey. To give them a fighting chance, at least just so they don't get sucker punched by like one volley of Polaris torps and then they die instantly. Make it a little harder for the Polarises, but it's my opinion. I guess that would be my other thing I'd addendum. If the PDSs are lagging behind on development, then that might make the Polaris take a little longer. And then if it goes to launch week, then that's a problem.
And then it makes sense too. We need a PDS on. There's a specific PDS on the Perseus too. That's built into it. So, yeah. But yeah, I agree, and we could. It's really hard to tell because they do have flak ammo, which has been in production for a while. If you look at the progress tracker, you can see that they've been actively working on a bunch of different ammo types for various ships. And I do wonder if a lot of that is just waiting for resource management to come in, because that will add a lot of like X object requires X resource to function. And I do wonder if CIG's whole like Sauron tools, one tool to rule them all, and in the verse bind them, these tools that are kind of covering so many different aspects of the game into one little chunk. If that isn't, if like ammo isn't just a resource for guns rather than being like its own separate kind of entity, they just tie it in with the resource system, because I could definitely see that happening too. But we'll see. I think that's a good question too. Like having an invincible Polaris running around shooting size 10 torpedoes that you can't dodge or kill it does sound broken. So
It really does.
all right. Shimpasta says SDF. I don't know what that means there, Shimpasta.
Straight to flyable.
Straight to flyable. Okay. SDF, not STF. SDF. Like D as in dino.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so I don't know. Whatever that means, please let me know. But they also say, when do you think we'll get a wipe? When do you think we'll get a wipe next year? And are you in favor of it? Very simple answer for me: 4.0 and yes. Axis, what do you think? Do you think we're going to wipe next year?
I think they need to do so before such a big update. Yes, simple answer.
Red J, do you think we're going to get a wipe, and do you support it?
Yeah, 4.0 would be a great point. I totally agree.
Okay. And the other thing is, okay, so you were just testing it, Shimpasta? Okay, good. I think the further point for like the reason why I think we would need one for Pyro is because hopefully around Pyro we will have the reputation system, and so they're going to want to move a lot of equipment and stuff off of store shelves and only earnable through reputation kind of lines. And so if you're going to do that, you're going to need to remove all that equipment that people purchased with cash, or ships that they have purchased with cash, because some of those ships may be required, like, down a certain reputation line. So yeah, like there will have to be a full wipe at some point when they're doing those sorts of testings, because they want to have that put in there. So all right. Next question comes from Toxic Lord, who asks, you mentioned the Idris coming. Any idea when the Kraken or Javelin will drop? No. Red J, do you have any insight on the Kraken or Javelin?
No, and I'm going to derail this for 1 second and just say the only surprise I suspect is the Liberator. I still am holding out for it. It's a 2-crew ship. It's pretty basic aside from the PDSs. We need it for Pyro.
Yeah.
What do you think we're gonna? Do you have any insight there, Axis, on Kraken or Javelin releases?
Okay, now from what I understand regarding John Cruz said this at CitizenCon.
Yes.
Regarding Squadron 42, the Javelin is going to be released after Squadron is released. The Idris. Well, no, the Idris is going to be released alongside
Squadron, yeah.
So that includes the P, the K, and the M variants, all three. The Javelin will be sometime later because it's far larger and more complicated. I'm also expecting sub-variants of some sort, because it's such a big ship, Paul. Think about it. You could tool it into a gigantic medium
talking about
carrier.
The Javelin?
Yeah.
The Javelin is modular.
Yeah, it's got the science base.
It's got modularity too, so it can be retooled into whatever you want it to be. So,
and I mean, the Polaris is plenty big enough. That's 28 people minimum without the crew for the fighter you're going to put in it.
Yeah. A maximum 28 crew, yeah. I think its minimum is like.
And then we have the
8.
Liberator that Red J just mentioned, and whatever anvil curveball may be thrown at us.
Yeah.
I still say the Liberator's like a prototype for a larger anvil capital ship.
Who knows? There's been that rumor that's been floating around for a while, so.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, as Axis said, I was going to mention that, is that the reason why the Idris is referenced on that was because John Cruz said two things. One, he said specifically that the Idris was going to come out alongside the release of Squadron 42, and then like a couple of minutes later, he literally said, "Yeah, the Idris coming out in 12 months." So it's like John Crew not only telling you when the Idris is coming out, but also leaking when their internal date for Squad 42 is. So in the same breath. So
Please don't release Grand Theft Auto 6 around that time frame, please.
Yeah. Well, there is a good point that Grand Theft Auto is going to be releasing on consoles first, and it'll take years to come onto PCs. But I do think that you don't want to like release it anywhere near GTA 6 because all of the marketing will suck the air out of the room for Squadron. So, you know. All right. And I mentioned that, and a lot of people got upset about that because they're like, it's not the same type of game. It's not the same kind of audience. And I keep looking at my friends who do GTA on like RP streams, and I'm like, they all like Star Citizen. They all want to do Star Citizen at some point. Guarantee you they're the same audience. All right. So we've got about 8 questions left. Shampasta asks, what happens if server meshing isn't in place, but Pyro is complete? How will we get to Pyro? You won't. I'm going to be very blunt. I don't think we're going to see Pyro. Like, I heard that CIG said that they made up excuses for why they didn't do the outer planets and stuff like that, which I get. There's some sort of like technical issue. I also 100% believe that they couldn't do the outer planets without meshing it. There's just too many entities in the outer planets. Because like it's twice the size of Stanton. Yep. So like I think it's just that they're reaching that critical limit, that upper limit of entities, and they just don't want to admit that because if the last time they admitted something like that, people got like lost their minds. So it's better just not to say it and just work on the problem. But you know, Pyro doesn't make sense without server meshing. That's just always been the case. Reggie, what do you think, though? Do you think we're going to see server meshing in place? If server meshing isn't in place, but Pyro is ready to go, how are we going to get to Pyro?
I think we're not going to do it. There's a scene in Firefly where Captain Malcolm Reynolds, he goes and he works the problem to handle a decoupler, where if they disconnect disconnect Serenity from the ship they're on, it will explode. He doesn't tell the crew. He's like, "Oh, we're just gonna do this burial. We're gonna do this thing," and they're like, "Wow, you're so great, Captain." When really he's just buying time and not letting anybody panic. That's a very your assessment's spot on.
Yeah. There's no reason to tell us that they can't do it because they already have a solution, and we already know what that solution is.
Yep.
Axis, what do you think what would happen if they got Pyro done but they didn't have server meshing?
I'm leaning toward that. I mean, as much as I'd like to think they would do the drop down
menu
click and thing, I'm leaning less toward it. And they wouldn't even suggest Pyro this year if they didn't have some faith in the back end tech. I mean, yeah.
We saw it live on stage, and it was like a tech demo using tools that weren't built for what they were doing, and just kind of cobbled it together so they could make it work. And they're already testing the decoupled. Oh gosh, I always said the replication layer already. It's being tested, and from what I've heard, it's fine. The problem is desync, but it's fine otherwise. It's like desync is not an issue. It's already an issue that's very common amongst amongst players of Star Citizen. We know it very well. So just the question of if they can fix it or not. But yeah, so we're in a good trajectory for that. Just a matter of when, I think, rather than if. Shampasta also asks, will the MSR or spirits get a second entrance, or is Crusader design language finalized now? Axis, what do you think? Do you think we're going to see a second entrance for these ships?
I've kind of heard that there might be a redesign maybe on the MSR to a degree, because there's a lot of independent internal space. But not so much on the spirit line because it's such a narrow, small internals volume. It's not like the MSR where it's all spread out on the interior. The MSR is also supposed to have a escape pod somewhere in the ship. I don't know where though.
Yeah.
I mean, if I remember straight.
Reggie,
I'm just saying.
Do you think we're going to see an update for the MSR spirits with a second entrance?
Spirits? I don't think so. Sorry. I just don't see it. But for the MSR, absolutely. There's been such a clamor, and it's as I think Axis, you kind of hit on that a little bit. It's a larger ship. Its scale is a little different. The crew size is kind of growing a little bit, especially when one of the unspoken rules with the MSR is its cargo bay is the real action right now. And sometimes like you're picking up friends who are in a vehicle or something else, so you could have 4 people on board or more. Long story made short, elevator could be brought down to the ground. Figure it out. Do a pass where you move whatever's underneath the elevator or whatever chutes and ladders hidden area is there. Just move it so the elevator can descend like the C2, M2, A2 have an elevator that can go through to the cargo, above and below into the ground. That would be a simple way to add a second entrance, or allow it to go through the roof. That would be really cool, like the Corsair does. And that would be a great way to add a defensive nature. So if somebody's camping the ship, you can just go to the rooftop and deal with it. You got a guy on the turret, you're good to go, right? The other thought I had, you mentioned an escape pod axis. I could see it in the scanning room. There's a ton of dead space behind the scanner. That space could be utilized for an escape pod, but it would be like, look, if you activate this thing, you're blowing a hole in the side of the ship like that. That's how I would add it if I was going to add it. I don't know if we'll ever see it, but
No, we're more likely to see a docking collar probably thinking about it than a escape pod. Honestly, thinking about it, Red J.
that space could be used. Yeah, it could. And you could add a set of steps to that or something, and all of a sudden now that would alleviate your issue with the second entrance.
Yeah, I think the Spirit is what it is. We're not going to see a change. The Spirit already has an escape pod. That is with the back end. There's no cargo. It's just the back end is an escape pod. But when it comes to like the MSR, the thing about the MSR, to kind of really drive this home, it was the first Crusader ship. They had never built a Crusader ship before they built the MSR. So it was the first ship in game that CIG had made from Crusader. They had been working on the Hercules, but the Hercules wasn't released until after the MSR had already been out. And a lot of the kind of stuff we see in the MSR, especially the living areas, are stuff that CIG likes. The problem is, outside of the living areas, the Crusader, the MSR is doo-doo. It's just bad. Like, it's as Execute likes to say, it's a house on stilts. You have an entire area, but like the crawl space, which is just not utilized properly. And like, I like the aesthetics of the giant server racks, but that it has a I'm going to start calling it the reclaimer issue, where it's been built for it's built for a mechanic that doesn't exist yet. And when that mechanic comes out, which is info running, it's probably going to look nothing like the MSR has, because it's going to have to be streamlined in some cases. So the MSR almost certainly will have to get an internal rework. Probably not as extensive as something like the Reclaimer might have to in the future, but it almost certainly will, just to make a better use of space, similar to like a 600i sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah, it is built on sticks. Ask Execute, he will tell you. Yeah, he will. But I do think as a result of that rework, it'll have to get a second entrance. And I do like your idea, Red J, of like an elevator, similar to like, say, the Corsair, where it has that elevator that goes up and down. That's a great idea. I think that'd be cool. That's a great way of doing it. Next question comes from TK Rex, who asks, do you think the cargo elevators are going to be tied to distribution centers? If not, do you think you'll get loading timers or smaller landing zones? What do you think, Red J? What do you think? Are we going to get loading cargo elevators at other places?
Yes. And I think that's going to be one of the first times that we take some of the pressure off the current planetary landing locations. So on the PTU, we often are told to test specific things, and a lot of people do listen. At the very least, we all usually spawn in at the same place. Mm-hmm. So if the server crashes, you all wake up in the same location, it puts a heck of a load on the system. If we were able to spread out the server population into like maybe not tiny places, but like medium-sized landing locations that had also cargo elevators implemented. That would be a welcome relief, I think, to spread people out a bit.
Okay. I'll jump in and say, yeah, I think they'll have to find a way of doing cargo elevators everywhere. I think they'll come up with a way of doing cargo elevators for like outposts and stuff like that at some point, or just remove the ability to trade at outposts, which is fine in my opinion. I think removing the ability to trade at outposts and focusing on distribution centers makes sense. There may be like a pad where you can sell stuff for places, or like maybe a pad where it'll like you'll pick up like a designated area which will spawn in when you say get like a cargo mission. But like I don't think you're gonna be buying like stuff from them. So, you know. What do you think, Access? Do you think we're gonna see cargo elevators tied to distribution centers?
I think there's a happy medium. We might see a combination of these distribution centers in the middle. We're starting to see it already, from these old outposts of yore to these bigger and bigger settlements. I think we're going to start to see not only these distribution centers, but have like small settlements built around them, making them basically small towns, like smokestack towns in the old, the 1950s and 60s in the US. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
The old Rust
yeah.
Belt.
Yeah.
So I would really like to see that aspect, because that would push more of the narrative that this is a living, breathing world.
Yeah, I agree. I think especially the outposts we have now, we know they're going to have to get an overhaul, because like they look neat, but like they look like exploratory outposts. They don't, like the mining outposts and the farming outposts don't look like farms. They look like weird combinations, like the tiny little like greenhouses which like grow 4 things. Suddenly this is a family farm. I'm like, that I've seen family farms. That is not a family farm. CIG.
Yeah.
That is a backroom garden.
I wasn't trying to take over with the whole outpost talk, but
no, but you're right.
The cargo thing is kind of interrelated with all the settlement and stuff.
Yeah. And that's what the question is like, effectively, are we going to see distribution centers replace outposts as these sort of like and we'll have like these sorts of cargo elevators? So
I think we're going to see further and further improvements, or versions of outpost settlements and distribution centers going forward. Because look at the Hurston skyline. It's only reached its tier 1 version. Yeah. It's upgrade. There are shanty towns supposed to be on the outskirts of Hurston, the slums and stuff, as an example. And those are supposed to have their own shops, bars, and mission givers out in the Outer Rim. I'm just speaking from lore and what's going to happen in Hurston.
Yeah.
And in Loreville. A lot of people don't know that, especially the newer people coming into the game.
Yeah, they used to have shanty towns too. The old version of Loreville did have little small shanty towns that were kind of the start of. So,
sorry to get off.
No, I think that was the spirit of the question. Is like, what's going to happen when these cargo elevators happen? Like, it's going to have to change, not just landing zones or stations. Like, this is going to be the future of cargo. So if this is the future of cargo, how is it going to impact outposts and settlements, any place where you're going to be buying or selling cargo in the general? And I think that's a good question going forward.
And Night Black Sun adds to it. He says, or maybe there'll be contracts to take commodities from the outposts and mines to the distribution centers. That's a good point.
That is, but I mean, the question becomes like, where do you get these commodities? Because right now you go to the kiosk and you hit button and it magically appears, but they want to physicalize it. So where is it going to be physicalized? We're going to see like an area that's just filled with 32 SU crates of like iron that you're going to have to move physically, and what happens if people steal them, or they steal them, that kind of stuff. So, all right. Next question. We've got 8 more questions. They keep piling up. When we get land claims bases, do you think they will integrate the hangars or start us off with pads for a while? Axis, what do you think? Do Do you think we're going to see hangars or pads for land claims and bases?
Well, hangars would be more permanent, I think. If they want more traffic, i.e., gameplay for right now, they'll do paths.
Okay.
But we don't know. They could do both.
That's a good point. I think yeah, long term they may have hangars, but I think CIG wants to give us a lot of options in terms of styles of buildings we build, like the complexity of buildings. Like CIG's whole thing about the blueprint system, like I think fundamentally the blueprint system will shape how Star Citizen moves forward. And I think what CIG will likely do is we kind of already seen what they're going to do. What they're going to do is neither landing pads nor hangars. We're going to see the spaceports at Mos Eisley. We've already seen them in
I was just thinking that
Pyro, where if you look at the Star Engine demo where they land the what is it, the Gladius in that center of the little depressed kind of bowl. Like I think that's what we're going to get. That's going to be our landing pad is going to be this little depressed bowl where you're going to have like maybe cargo elevators or like storage or something like that, where it's sort of protected from the vertical elements or horizontal elements, but not from the vertical. So,
Right.
What do you think? What do you think, Red J? Do you think we're going to start off with hangars or with like pads for a while?
the most fun was going to the Pyro preview and seeing those places. They exist. They're already in the game, and they're really awesome. The locations that are pads, but they have surrounding locations, and that's perfect for outpost work because it's a defensive place that you can use to do trade or act in a military way defensively, beachhead, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of an all-in-one. You can fill in the gaps. And I would be shocked if CIG hasn't already thought about having like modularized sides to that. So you can turn it into a trade hub, or you can turn it into a habitations, or like little shop style entrances along the sides in the circle. That would be a no-brainer.
Yeah, I get you. I also came to me because I've seen chat thinking about back to like because it also brings up the point of the like cargo elevators. I wouldn't be surprised if CIG did it first like a stopgap for like outposts. If they just did like a hangar, like a warehouse. Like they just plop a warehouse module down somewhere nearby them, and when you go to get your cargo that you purchased or you're supposed to do for a mission, you go to that hangar and you punch in your little number that they give you, and you open it up, and when it opens up, all of your cargo is there, and you kind of pull it out and that kind of stuff. So they'll do something that's effectively cargo elevators, because the whole thing about cargo elevators isn't the fact that it's an elevator; it's the fact that it's spawned in where you don't see it and then arrives where you see it. So it's more immersive.
That would also help out with vehicles too, ground vehicles.
Yeah, it would be, because you wouldn't just pop into existence. You could store them in a hangar. So, they'll give us, they'll give us an Amazon locker, but it'll be a big Amazon locker. It'll be like the size of a warehouse, but a little like a storage unit, like a personal storage unit, where you put your little button in and it'll just raise up, sort of thing. All right. Next question comes: will we be able to pick the style of hangar opening either horizontal or vertical? I don't know. For like base building? What do you think, Greg J?
I think there'll be one set thing at first, and then over time it'll kind of fill in the gaps. And I understand the push with the Soylent and stuff. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Astro.
I was going to say, my thought is vertical, because that's the easiest one, because you can just like make a hangar and you just have a sort of a walkway or an elevator. So that, you kind of like, they already have that semi like underground version that they do. All they have to do to make it fully underground is just put a roof on it, which has hangar doors. That's it. So what you gonna say, Roger?
No, that's exactly it. We've seen with some of the ships that are now coming down the pipeline that are better at landing vertical or taking off vertical versus sideways. I get the question's spirit, but I do agree with you completely that vertical is the way to go to starting.
Yeah. What do you think, Axis? Do you think we'll get a choice of vertical or horizontal hangars if we build them, or do you think it's going to be one or the other?
Vertical, I think, will probably be the beginning because most ships are vertical, right?
Mhm.
Take off and go this way.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the only ship that we have that lands on its butt right now is the Sulan.
Mhm.
At the moment, ATM. But pretty soon we're going to have the Raylan as well.
Yeah.
And that's a much larger ship. So that's going to be interesting.
All right. The next question comes from I Said Good Day, Sir, who says, will the Freelancer top hatch, I think is what they're trying to say, be used for any kind of docking or will it stay forgotten? This is very easy to answer because the Freelancer top hatch is a relic of a days gone by. I don't think, because all of the other top hatches from every other ship has been removed. I think the MISC ships are the only ones that even have bottom hatches anymore. For those of you who don't know, the Cutlass actually had a giant bottom hatch opening when it was first released. So you'd go to the back area, which is like, where the hangar or the cargo bay is now. There would be like a little small circle where you push a button, it would open up the bottom and you could jump through the bottom because it was supposed to have like a boarding jig where like it would like attach onto another ship and then like cut a hole in the ship to let you in. And that's why a lot of those ships had top hatches, because they're supposed to be to allow the Cutlass to board other ships. And when that went away, so did a lot of the vertical hatches. I think the Freelancer's vertical hatch is just a relic of that gone by. So
yeah. I remember the Tally was the best one. There's in chat they're talking about the other ones, the Reclaimers and such. Sorry.
Yo, go ahead.
I always fondly remember the days of my Tallies before I CCU'd them. And the door or the hatch at the top and the bottom, if you had both open accidentally, you would just zip through the ship over and over.
And for those who don't know, they are doing the Retaliator update, and they're getting rid of those hatches entirely from the Retaliator, and we know that's the case. So like, yeah. So the reason why that top hatch exists is because it's a relic, and it will eventually go away. And when they do the updates for all the older ships, all of those top hatches are gone. If you don't believe me, look at any ship released after like 2017. None of them have top hatches. Or whenever they made the decision. I think it was like 2017, 2018. They kind of started getting rid of all of them. So, yeah, the Constellation has a top hatch. The Reclaimer has a top hatch, and they all need to get the Reclaimer. After the discussion I had about the Reclaimer, I'm a firm believer that the Reclaimer is in line for a complete overhaul, internally and externally, similar to what they did with the Cutlass. Where it just needs to get a complete makeover from ground up redo to match the actual gameplay realities of what that chip's supposed to do.
The Reclaimer doesn't even have a docking collar yet. It's
no. It's so bad. It's so duct tape and binder twined together to function, so.
Yeah, and chat, they're saying that top hatch that's supposed to be the docking collar for the Reclaimer, what they're pointing out is it doesn't work.
Yeah. It doesn't work, and it's because it was supposed to be for back when they were going to dock with stations vertically, which confused me because it's like you would have to drop like a ladder of some kind, or you'd have to turn off gravity to be able to float up. So, new ships has side hatches. Like all of the new ships have side hatches, which is the reason why. Even the rework of all of the Cutlasses have side hatches rather than top hatches and bottom hatches because of that reason. So.
If they did a trailer for a new patch and all it had was get rid of the top hatches, I would be like, I'm on board. I'm on board.
That's up there with just do a trailer that's 15 seconds that said we replaced the star map, and I'm just like, it's the best trailer. This is the best advertisement you've ever made, CIG. All right. Monster Avi asks, they said they were going to bring the K kit out with the Idris. Would you expect them to have all of the ship's unmanned turrets bladeable, or just the Idris / limited amount? I think all turrets are going to be bladeable in some cases. I think they said some turrets may not be, but I don't know what the arbitrary reason is. What do you think, Access? Do you think we're going to see like all turrets be? For those of you who don't know what a bladeable is, AI blades effectively, instead of having to pay for an NPC, you can pay for an upgrade, which replaces anybody using the manned turret with a with your ship, basically turning those turrets into remote operations, but you don't get to control them. You just tell the AI, you tell your ship what to shoot at, and it'll shoot at it for you. So you don't have to pay for an NPC, but it'll cost you in things like power or heat or some sort of other management, or it'll make your ship harder to use if you use that blade, but you don't have to pay for an NPC. So, well, what do you think, Axis? Do you think we're going to see all turrets be bladeable? So
It depends, I guess, on the ship. I mean, I think there will be a cutoff probably on the type of ship. Capital ships seem more likely, and subcapitals to have bladable ships. I don't think they're just going to be like willy-nilly going to give bladable turrets to every ship. The Idris, of course, is a capital ship, so vanilla flavor, yes, it's going to have some bladable turrets, but when they do finally do blades, there's going to be a cutoff point. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Where it's going to be like you're going to have a co-pilot for your turret. I don't see Drake having a turret blade.
The cutlass having a turret blade. Yeah. And Gin Tonic did bring up that like there's going to be slots for computer like add-ons. So, Red J, what do you think? Do you think we'll see every ship be bladable for like their turrets and such?
Well, if on the Idris from the question, the Idris K is a parts kit, right? But interestingly, the Idris P/K, when it has the parts on it or not, does not have a second power plant like the M does. The M has a secondary power plant just for the railgun that it has. That's why the difference is. It has the size 10 mount, but it can't run the railgun because it doesn't have the second power plant. That's where it gains its extra storage space, its SCU space. So to the topic, if the blades require a significant amount of extra power, and the K kit's already kind of pushing all the power to the max by adding that Exodus beam laser size 10 and all these upgraded weaponaries and PDSs and stuff, then all of a sudden I would say, well, the power draw might be something, but it is a cap ship, and I believe its CPU is going to be incredible amount of processing potential on a cap ship of that scale and size. It's one of the few upsides of having a cap ship. So for cap ships, I think yes, I think there's a high chance that you'll be able to blade them. Now, I will strongly suggest, though, that there will probably be a situation where the blades are not as effective as actually having an NPC gunner. So
Yes.
I think that's what. So just bookending with that.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that CIG specifically has said that every ship will not have enough power to run all systems at once. And while I know it's a point of contention for a lot of people, I personally like that idea because it makes sense. You aren't running every system on for like a car or like a boat. You don't turn absolutely everything on that car or boat all the time without it being a tremendous drain on resources of some kind. Things are designed to be working at certain times, so it makes sense to build like even logically, like narratively, that ship designers would be cheap and only put in enough power for you to run all the necessary systems at the necessary time, rather than like giving you an infinite amount of power for a vehicle. And that also gives a differentiation. Like you get the chance of like, this is a capital ship. It has a core that was installed into it and, was built, and it ain't moving. So things better run more than your systems you have, just because you want to keep it going, versus I bought this secondhand from a Drake dealership, it's probably not going to run everything. So, and it allows for power management gameplay and stuff like that. And so, yeah, I think, when you're looking at the kind of bladed idea, you're probably going to have limited resources in terms of power and limited slots of availability with some of those things as well. So, all right. I keep answering questions, and y'all keep putting more in there. All right, Gin and Tonic. This is a very long one. Gin, calm down. I'm gonna have to read this in the way it's presented. For time immemorial, there has always been a faction of the player base that expects to be able to solo multi-crew ships with AI crew and bladed turrets. Do you think CIG is actually going to make this possible? And how hard will you laugh at them when the server tick rate drops and the AI becomes a HAL 9000 singing Daisy? I think we just kind of covered a lot of that discussion right there. It's like, I do think that CIG will never artificially make it so that you cannot function with a large capital ship solo. You will always be able to fly a large capital ship on your own. But CIG isn't going to make it easy. And I think people will very quickly realize that reputation and money, the cost and reputation it will take to run a large capital ship on your own with NPCs, as well as the micromanagement required for it, will be untenable and not fun. It's one of those things I get in arguments with X a lot about, because X says, well, they could, because the hard part is making NPCs suck when they're perfect. And the answer is yes, but CIG will also intentionally make it so that NPCs do suck. And on top of all of that, it'll be much more difficult to micromanage in stressful situations. Because the one thing that Star Citizen and any video game will, especially online, will tell you is nothing you plan to do will work. There will always be something that goes wrong, and you will have to adapt. And it's a lot harder to adapt on the fly when you have to order 100 NPCs to do a job than it is for you to tell somebody else who's a thinking human who can adapt to it. So,
Right.
So I think the answer is, I don't think CIG is going to artificially limit the ability for players to play it, but I do think that a lot of players are setting themselves up for disappointment if they're going to rely on NPCs and AI blades. Red J, what do you think?
It's tough. Relying on NPCs for anything is always a mixed bag and risk. I think that people need to face. I do think that there is a elephant in the room, and that's games like EVE Online, ED, where there's many others. I'm not just picking favorites here.
Yeah.
But I understand where the feelings come from of wanting to play solo and have that. But I think it's going to be a long time before we'll have the ability to combine the use of blades and NPCs to have 0 other players on that ship effectively, especially when you start scaling up. I do think we will get to the point where a small squad of players can administrate a pretty reasonable sized ship, especially ships that don't have fighters on board that are expected to actually fulfill its needs.
Yeah. Axis, what do you think?
Well, we have to realize there's a reason why this comes back to a segment I saw you do earlier about credit cards.
Yeah.
You know where I'm going with this on.
Yeah, a lot of people like that. So
yeah. There's a reason why we are limited currently to the Javelin. The Javelin is a massive ship, almost 90 to 100 players to even beyond it to utilize it to its full potential. And it's not just, getting the servers to get up to tick rate to getting the turrets to go, but for things like the Bengal, you have to make the gameplay work, fun, engaging, actually enjoyable for ships that large if you own it. But credit card go whoosh. if things have to be sold, credit card go whoosh.
I do think that credit card go whoosh, but CIG is notorious for credit card go whoosh, and then people realize that like a couple of months later, like, wait, I bought the hype and I can't actually use any of this stuff. I mean, like, there's been a legitimate case of content creators being like, you need to start rethinking your capital ship purchases and multi-crew ships, and people going, oh yeah, I do, and start to like try to sell off their ships or downsize because they realize that they just don't have the people for it after seeing the engineering gameplay, to the point where there are people who grumble and are worried, legitimately worried that like engineering gameplay is going to ruin the game because it's going to force players who don't want to have to micromanage engineering to micromanage engineering. So, but
Before they started talking about the engineering gameplay, I was honestly considering melting everything I got and getting an Idris, no, not an Idris package, but a package with a javelin.
mhm.
But now I'm content to have my Dominus package, which has an Idris P at the large end, because that's all I really need for a medium ore, a large, medium-sized capital ship. I don't need a javelin.
Yeah.
The Idris alone is powerful enough.
The Aegis is actually on the smaller side in terms of capital ships. So, all right. Foxbat asks, any ideas for a big Argo ship? What do you think, Access?
I would love to see an Argo salvager, definitely, because industrial, it fits their motif.
Yeah.
You have the mole frame. You could take the mole and make it a medium salvager that instead of 96 SCU of refined materials, maybe say 60 RMC or somewhere a happy medium between the Reclaimer and the Vulture, with scraper beams and stuff. But it'd be a multi-crew salvager based on the mole frame.
Okay. Red Jay, what do you think? Large Argo ship.
I would love to see the raft reworked. So for different things, like variants of it. A particular salvage ship would be a wonderful operation. The mole, I think, is a lesson to learn. I'm not picking on the idea of having a large salvage ship and the size. I think Axis you nailed, but the mole is the frame. I'm not sold on, because I've had a hard time trying to get people to fly with the mole in with me. It's not about mining. It's that you're locked away in a tiny little room down a death corridor, and you're ripped away from the ship every time you hop in it, and everybody's separated. Whereas when you're on the Reclaimer, everybody's having a blast. You're all on the bridge together, joking around, having a good time, making money, and then you all go to the back and figure it out. So honestly, I was very impressed, and I think that's a lesson to learn for this. When we go down a step, the raft has a little more of that common area in it where you could rework it, maybe, especially where that cargo currently is. So that hab area, you walk right through it, and bam, you're out into the salvage area instead of cargo dropping mechanisms. But that's my bias. Whatever it looks like, whatever manufacturer it looks like, it should be trying to steal some of that magic that the Reclaimer currently has. The Reclaimer itself is a ship that needs work. Totally agree with you, Paul. But the style of the bridge and that back area need to be captured, the actual plate multi-crew gameplay.
No, I agree. My problem with the Reclaimer has nothing to do with the box management or the piloting of it. It's literally the rest of the ship. It's like those two areas are great. It's just the rest of the ship is just enormous for the sake of being enormous and aesthetic for the sake of being aesthetic. It's the whole. It was trying to be the Nostromo, but they had no idea what salvaging gameplay would look like. And now that we have an idea of what salvage, the final version of salvage is going to be, the whole vibrations, the structural salvage idea, the concept of the claw is completely removed, and like the giant processing center with the teeth doesn't make a lot of sense. And while it looks cool, it makes a lot more sense to turn that into a smaller area. To take the gigantic spider and shrink it down by about half and streamline the movement of flow of people from place to place would do a lot, because there's a lot of wasted space in it. It's got that 600i problem, but I think its exterior is also too big. I think you could keep a lot of the aesthetics. You would need to, like I said, with like similar to the Drake, to Cutlass. For people who've been around for long enough, the original Cutlass was very different from the Thickless that we have now, because the original Cutlass was very small, but it was very differently designed. You can actually see elements of it still stuck around, the Cutlass that we have today, I think, is a lot better. It benefited from that change, and I think the same thing would happen with the Reclaimers. Like, yeah, you could keep a lot of the same lines, make it a little bit smaller, improve some of the flow, and people would fall in love. It would be like the Cutlass, where people just I will live and die for my Reclaimer. It just needs that rework. So. And the OG Cutlass had a toilet. It was a tube that you peed into, but yeah, it was a NASA toilet from 900 years in the past. But for Argo ships, my personal perspective is I would like them to stay away from salvage. I know a lot of people would like them to have salvage, but I've always seen Argo as a logistical support company rather than a and as you said, Red J, it's very much an outlier. The Mole is very much an outlier, and I think the Mole suffers from that similar. We have a new mechanic. Let's build a ship that works for it. But the only ship that they had that was Argo before that was the MPUV, and the MPUV got an overhaul since then too. So then they built the Raft and the SRV, and since then it's like, okay, so we kind of get the idea of what they kind of get the idea of what Argo is supposed to be, but that's kind of the outlier. I would love to see a big Argo ship that is either kind of like a repair ship or some sort of like refinery ship. So like the Expanse, but bigger. So like, but unlike say like the Galaxy, which can only refine and can't really store, you have a refinery that also has a big storage area. So it's kind of like a floating kind of refinery platform. Those kind of ideas. So it's not just we can refine.
Like Orion.
Yeah, it's like an Orion without the mining stuff. So you can take a lot of that process out, like make it a smaller package. But it gives the ability to show up a bunch of ships, dock in, and dump all of their materials into your refinery, and then you refine it, and you put it all in the back, and you truck off to where you need to go, and you can go sell it because it's already in your cargo bay, sort of thing. So,
Paul, can I add to that for a moment?
Go for it.
I've long been pushing for an Argo barge style ship that has like very limited capacity to go into quantum. That's very, very slow at any sublate, etc. But being able to have that capacity of other ships can dock at it, being able to attach a refinery to it, ideally, and having like tooling locations so you can rig it up for ground vehicle transportation or cargo or raw goods like hopper style drop-offs for ores and such. That would be immensely valuable for industrialists. Yeah.
The Argo barge. Yeah, and you call it the barge as in big letters, BARGE, and you come up with some stupid name for it because that's what CIG always makes up, stupid acronyms for Argo, and I love it. I love that aesthetic. It's right. The whole we came up with the name, and now we have to make a excuse for why we call it that. Like the Raft.
On the other hand, for a medium salvager, since Argo's kind of an outlier.
Mm-hmm.
RSI being a much older company makes far more sense.
Yeah, I agree. I think RSI would make, or MISC would be much better at doing salvage for like medium or large versions, like the in between the Reclaimer and the Vultures. So
definitely would have a more clean industrial aesthetic on both of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. You have the dirty entrepreneur starting aesthetic with the Vulture. You have the high but strong military contract I'm getting today aesthetic with the Reclaimer. So you need that middle of the road kind of stuff, leaning toward you're getting the big contract stuff of the Reclaimer. You see what I'm saying? Career path.
Career path, and also aesthetically, from the scrappy startup to the established, military contractor. Yeah, to more of a like instead of selling watches on the side of the road versus having a chain of stores, you have that like consignment store that you run, sort of idea. You're a little bit above you when you were just selling watches that you found on this that fell off the truck, but you're still you're still salvaging, you're still doing some dirty work, but you're at least more legitimate now, kind of thing. So yeah. All right, we've got 8 more questions. Next question comes from Midnight Black SC, who asks, so you think Squadron will be in the Steam or Epic stores on release? No. Not a chance. Unless Epic pays them a lot of money, it's not going to be in the Epic store. It will be on their launcher, and they'll sell it on their launcher, and only their launcher, until they think that they've reached the market saturation, and only then will they talk to Steam or Epic, because they want to make as much money off of it as possible, and you have to pay a 30% cut to Steam to sell it on their store. So, that's why. What do you think, Red J? Do you think they'll release it in Steam or Epic on day one?
Not day one. And you nailed it on Epic. I don't think it'll ever go to Epic. I mean, never's a strong word, but yeah. I highly doubt. Steam over time, who knows? I will just this is in the back of my mind. I can't help it. Shanghai Q&A. So Shanghai Bar Citizen, Chris and Sandy had a thing there. Sandy asked the crowd if they play consoles and do they love consoles. And I think that might have started a rumor about some of these ideas of implementations across different platforms, different sales places. I wouldn't read into it too much. I think she was just trying to create that connection with the audience. I wouldn't read into it.
Yeah. I mean, I personally, I think that CIG has always been very, I would say not very clear. They've been opaque, but, I don't mean that's not the right word. They've been subtly clear. Put it away. They've been subtly clear that they will 100% sell Squadron 42 on consoles at some point. Like, that is never. It's just a matter of when. Yeah. Do I think that CIG is going to release Squadron 42 on consoles the same day as PC? Hell no. Absolutely not. Negativo. That is not in the cards. That is Chris Roberts would Chris Roberts would rather burn CIG to the ground than do something like that, because Chris Roberts has been very clear, even up to today, for his disdain for the console method of doing business. He did an entire, it's not a TED Talk, he did it at BAFTA. He did an entire, talk about why he was doing Star Citizen the way he was doing it. It's basically how he absolutely hates the console market. He thinks it's the worst thing to happen to video games next to the mobile market. He hates consoles. But at the same time, Chris has also never released a game that hasn't been on consoles at some point. I think the only one he has released that it hasn't been on consoles is Freelancer. But every Wing Commander game that he made was on consoles. So I don't think it would ever not have it. So yes, Luna Maria, we've had 8 more questions for the last 8 questions, but I finally paused Redemption so people stop putting stuff in. What do you think, Axis? Do you think they're going to release Squadron 42 or on Steam and Epic on the same day release?
Squadron 42 is very unlikely, but the PU, heck no.
Okay. All right.
I mean, there's multiple reasons why. The servers tick, for one. I don't know if anyone plays online gaming through PlayStation Store, Xbox Live, Nintendo, whatever. It's not anywhere near as good as we get through our computers.
Yeah, but no, the question specifically, the question specifically was through Steam or Epic on PC.
I don't think it's ever going to be through Steam or Epic. There's a lot of licensing, and they would get a massive cut of the revenue. And Chris wouldn't be too happy about that.
All right. Monster Avi asks, speaking on the Crusader design philosophy, do you think things like the engines plus VTOL, lack of docking collars is really pushing them towards planetary atmosphere focused use? Maybe. Red J, what do you think? Do you think CIG is pushing Crusader to be the planetary atmospheric manufacturer rather than, say, like space-based?
There's a couple of interesting things here. So In the past, CIG has kind of tried to mold ships into the vision they had for them during concept, during the working through the process. I'll give you an example, just one example. Polaris versus Hammerhead. I was here. I feel like I was there,
I
Gandalf,
was
3,000
there.
years ago.
Yes.
When the Polaris was supposed to be the offensive choice, and of course the Hammerhead was just as good but defensive with only a couple less bells and whistles and no hanger. And if you don't want a hanger, just go the Hammerhead. And now you look at them and it's like the Hammerhead is nothing like the Polaris. Like it's negative space. It never had a chance of having the same services. It's not a cap ship. That's fine. That's fine. But it was presented that way, and it slowly gained its own life. It got its own reputation. The community figured out what it was, and it's still a great ship. It's just it isn't what a Polaris is. It's not in the same class. Yeah. So, flashing forward here, whenever you see CIG presenting a ship and the vision for it, just know that it will be completely different once the players get a hold of it. One more example I have is the Kraken versus the Kraken Privateer. The Kraken Privateer gives up 2 stories of auxiliary fuel tanks for, depending on who you ask, 10, 16, or 20 HABs to fit everything for the... I think they keep changing the number based on how many HABs it's going to need for the market to run. But that means that the market version, the Privateer, is excellent for an org that needs a ton of HABs and they're trying to operate on a shorter range, whereas the Kraken Vanilla has those massive auxiliary fuel tanks, so it keeps its range to refuel all of its ships. So long story made short, my long-winded answer, sorry, is what the vision of the ship is can drastically change once it gets in players' hands, and make the decision for yourself and talk with your org mates about how you would use the ship. And that's really your answer, is what works for you.
Okay. Axis, same question to you. Do you think CIG is setting Crusader up to be the planetary atmospheric brand versus the space brand?
It kind of looks like it because it's got this smooth, streamlined look. None of them, a couple of people were pointing out in chat, none of them have docking hatches.
Yeah.
Or anything like that.
That was what the question was saying. It was like they don't have docking hatches. They seem to be more focused on atmospheric flight in general because like all of their designs are very aerodynamic or attempting to be aerodynamic. The
M2, C2, and A2 are all big enough for relatively large ground combat vehicles. The M2 was designed for the UE military to deploy tumbrel tanks and cyclones and other ground-based vehicles. So I would expect further, Crusader ships if they ever come out with a 3-line. Like not an A3 because Morph would kill me for even mentioning it, but a C3, M3, or say an E3, something like just slightly down from a Genesis, but longer range maybe.
Okay.
The economy Genesis Starliner, but like a Super Hercules series. But if we ever get larger tanks, we're going to need bigger Hercules. I mean, people are like, it's not going to happen, but where did the C1 come from? Yeah.
I have no idea about the aesthetics. I think a lot of this stuff is just like a lot of the problems with the Crusader design style comes from twofold. Number one, it was so popular. I mean, it was so, like it's really, if you weren't there, you don't know the absolute insanity that was the MSR release. Like so many people were losing their minds about the MSR, about its design style, and then like when the Hercules came out, it finally challenged the Caterpillar. People were like, finally, I get a not ugly looking ship when I want to haul my ship, and it can hold my stuff, and it can hold more than the Caterpillar. Like pre-Hull C was very weird for cargo haulers, and as a result, like Crusader really was just this, like anything CIG sold that was Crusader would just print money, and it's a big problem that I personally had with them making the Starfighter, the Ares, because for me it was like the Ares decision came down to this is the hot shit, and a lot of possibly designers were like, hey, I want to work on a Crusader ship, and they're like, hey, let's make this Crusader ship because it's cool and people like it, and you want to do it because it's popular with even the designers, and it shouldn't have been a Crusader ship. It should have been something else. And I think the Ares was that turning point where the Ares, like the complicated issues with the Ares, spoiled the milk for a lot of the CIG's designers. So they just kind of went, don't want to do the Crusader series anymore, which is why, even though they did obviously release the Spirit, the Spirit was released, was announced last year, I think. Took them about a year to get done. So, and they still haven't done the E1 yet. Like it's still a bit up there for a while. So,
I would hesitate to think that the E1 still will arrive pretty soon.
Yeah. Okay, chat's rebelling against me. They're like, the cat is beautiful. Yes, because you're all Drake fans like me, and you're all true sons and daughters of Magnus. We approve of this. Approve of the support. But like the community was one legitimately like I'm done with the caterpillar. So I think there's a question that kind of talks about the caterpillar here in a moment. But I think as a result, because of that change, like CIG has yet to go back and renew the look at its ships, going from being like the hype of Crusader to the reality of what ships they want to make with Crusader. So, and I mean, you can even look at the C2. The C2 had a change because they realized, oh wait, we can put two 32 SCU crates in here. Perfect. So. All right. Potato Win asks, have they said they will make a better chat system with the chat tabs, etc., like other MMOs? They've mentioned something about it, but I'm gonna say the controversial thing. I think they're gonna do away with global chat. I think global chat will go the way of the dodo. Because
I'm okay with that.
It's not very aesthetic. Like, it doesn't work with it's not immersive. I think you might have like chat for a system or chat for a planet. Probably more like a system. Like you'll have the Stanton chat and then you'll have like the Pyro chat. But I think they'll be dependent on a lot of things. And they have talked about like your ships themselves will have those MMO pop out features where you can take a specific screen that you really use all the time and pop it out and put it on your visor. So you can customize your kind of like tabs that you have open for any ship. And I imagine if they do that for the ship, I imagine they'll do the same for, because it's a visor based thing. It could be done for any screen that you have in game. So, but yeah, and they did say they're going to put Spectrum in game. So instead of chat, you'd have something more like Spectrum, where you have chat, but it's individual topics and stuff like that. So, but what do you think, Red J? Do you think we're going to? Have you heard anything about them making a better chat system?
I'm just noticing the E1. You've lit the chat up. Speaking of this chat, yeah, we're all waiting for the E1. We all want the E1. We are excited for it. My beloved, but the chat is something that I agree with you. System wide makes sense. I also think that for immersion side, if like you start messing with the planetary owner, I'm shocked that they won't be able to just shut down the chat net. I think that's going to be a thing. And when the Vandal invade, same deal. They'll shut it down. Hacking will impact it.
That would be a cool aspect too. If you get, by unlocking reputation, you could get access to like faction chat. So like you work with Ninetales, you lose chat, you lose access to like the Stanton chat, but you can talk to all this in the Ninetales. I'm thinking in my own brain of like just CIG populating random chatbots with just producing random things that they're talking about in faction chat to make it more immersive. Like, oh, yeah, I'm the only person online who's with the Ninetales right now, but the chat's full of like a bot talking to itself.
That would get really creepy.
Yeah. What do you think? Have you heard anything, Access, about like better chat systems or anything like that?
One thing, if they do a system thing, I think they need to do that. Okay, they could keep a skeletal global chat for infractions, like people using cheats and stuff like that in game. right? And stream sniping, obviously.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if you've dealt with it, Paul, but I've had a few unnecessaries to deal with. But they need to keep at least that functionality done, but they also need to improve their reporting of things like that on system chat side, at least, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Especially in the CIG for accessibility issues that has some of the biggest problems. The two biggest problems I've seen with CIG is UI interface needs to be able to change just with colors. And I know CIG is like, but my aesthetics. It's like, cool, but some people are colorblind. CIG, you need to, and certain colors don't work well in other colors, and there's lots of different colors in the game. So let players choose the colors of their HUD. It's very important. Even if you just have to hack it in for now, do it because it's important. And also being able to mute and report people, because there are some foul mouth. I automatically hit F12 when I get into game, and people have asked me why I do that. It's like, because I don't want to be playing Star Citizen and get banned because someone goes on a racist tirade in game chat. And right now, you could basically go on game chat and start like doing stuff that would be legitimately illegal in the countries that Star Citizen is available in, and talking about that stuff, and you could get away with it because there's no report feature. So, you know,
I know it gets pretty gross sometimes in the chat, and I'm like, yep, F12 time click.
Yeah, and yeah, most game chats are horrible, but like most game chats, I'm not forced to see them when I pop into game. I have to pull up a tab. Like, you log into Star Citizen, it's automatically active when you come in. So I think like having a more diegetic chat system where it's only available on your Moby Glass and you have to apply it to your visor if you want to see the chat pop up, and it's only system based and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
It's also, there should be like a sliding scale. So if you're in like Pyro, in the roughest parts of Pyro, maybe some more cursing, so to speak, if you get my drift, versus like if somebody's just logging in for the first time in the history of the game for them and they're picking out outfits in the commons, they're probably not going to hear people on like screaming about something or writing curse words too much.
Yeah, I'm not here to say CIG should censor people, but I think people should have the ability to mute or report, certain aspects of the game, just because there are some legitimate problems that have happened on game that I've seen happen, that people have documented about, like harassment and abuse and other things like that. And I've seen plenty of chat turn toxic to the point where like I wouldn't want to be part of this community if the only interaction I ever had with Star Citizen was in game chat, because sometimes it can be pretty hostile. So all right, we've got about 5 questions left. Finally, we have 2 questions which are about well, we're gonna have to go through some of this stuff. So Foxbat asks, do you want a Raylan or a fixed caterpillar first? What do you have to fix about the caterpillar? Caterpillar's perfect. No notes. I would say the only problem I have with the caterpillar is the bad placement of its tractor beams. It just needs to have a telescoping remote tractor beam option, and you're fine. I don't think it has any kind of others, because modules can happen. Yeah, the modules are coming out in the first place, and that's fine. But like, I don't know. What do you think, Axis? Would you rather have the Raylan or the caterpillar?
I have a Raylan on backlog, so I'm kind of waiting on it. I mean, I do have other Drake ships, but I'm just not really a Caterpillar fan.
Okay. Red J, what do you think?
I want to see it get its modules on the cat. I'd like to see it more wide, so those modules have more space to work with. I think the Carrack's going to face that issue too when it finally gets its modules. It needs a little more room to work with to make the modules more practical.
I'm thinking they'll probably rework that whole cargo bay when they get modules in, because those cargo bays need to become modules themselves, so they'll have to be reworked. And I think the one problem I have with the Caterpillar is those infinite looping corridors that do when you're walking through. It's like it's kind of aesthetic, but I think what they'll do, they'll in my mind, what they may do is they'll combine some of those cargo modules. So instead of it having 4 cargo bays, it'll in the frontal, it'll have 2 and then the frontal, and then for each one. So then you have bigger, or maybe even have the option to have 2 connected rather than just 1, 1, 1, 1. Them just kind of like double up on them, or maybe even just full tube it. For it, and then that gives them more flexibility to make modules for like 1 or the half or the whole of the ship. And it lets their creativity be able to come out more. So,
and before anybody gets pitchforks out, because that's suggesting that you can't have 4 different kinds of modules. That doesn't mean that they can't design modules that are half and halves. So so just keep that in the back of your mind, Chad, before you start riling up.
Yeah. So like what I imagine is something like if you wanted like a broadside module, which is really cool. If you haven't played Hyper Vanguard Force, which is the in-game arcade game that was made by a developer in his free time that you can actually play in. You can't play it in game, but you can play it on the website. But it's pretty cool. It's like an old, what was it, 1942 or those sorts of old style like flight games. One of the mini bosses you fight is a caterpillar that has its sides open, has these giant beam cannons that shoot out from it. And I could easily see like a caterpillar that has a broadside module like that. That's just a giant tube because it's just power plants and guns. So it's a unique thing. You couldn't use a cargo module with it because it's designed to just turn the cat into a battleship. So, and that makes it more interesting too. Like having different size modules, which will require you to sacrifice other modules to use that module, means that you have to make a meaningful choice with it, but it still gives you the flexibility to be able to go, today I want to be a battleship, tomorrow I want to be a cargo ship, So, thank you, Half-Forston. I think we can answer the question. TK Rex asks, do you think we Drake fanboys will be able to do something dumb like hook up a second power plant in the cargo bay? I think you'll be able to hook up a second power plant to the ship. I don't know, maybe, but I'm a big proponent. We talked about this last time of Smuglonium, which is I think CIG's the future for CIG when it comes to stuff that will improve your ship's components, your ship's abilities, is things you can purchase which will end up in your cargo bay, which will work for as intended purpose, like a refining module that's like the size of a 32 SCU crate or a 16 SCU crate that fits in that same set of kind of floor space. And you just need to hook it up to some power and you can have it run and it'll be able to refine stuff on the fly in situ that you can then fuel your ship with. So that means you can take a ship that doesn't have a refinery or a mining capability and give it a refining capability without having to buy the bigger ship. It does take up cargo space, so it does a trade-off, but it gives that different ability. And I think a lot of gameplay aspects, which we already have in game, like quantum interdiction or EMP generators, you could probably do that as like a cargo module, but with trade-offs. But I don't think we're ever going to have like a straight-up power plant you could plug into your ship to give it more power so you can run everything. But I don't know.
Not without bad things going boom.
What's the famous thing from Team Fortress 2? What's going to happen? And the doctor being like, I have no idea, while he's laughing. that's Drake fans when they hook up an exterior power plant to their Cutlass to supercharge it. Red J, what do you think? Do you think we'll be able to do exterior?
Real quick, I derailment for a second.
Yeah.
I have images in my head when I was a kid playing Feed the Beast, and the first time we got a nuclear power plant, we didn't know what to do with it, and the high voltage hookups and stuff in Minecraft, and we were all like, we don't know what we're gonna do with it, but we're gonna build this nuclear reactor. It's gonna be great. And then one of our and I was the one that was like, well, wait a minute, we're building this next to our houses. This might not be the best idea, but okay, I'm on board. Like, so on the thoughts of Drake. Drake is like, if anybody's gonna do it, it's gonna be Drake. I agree with the great question, the way you phrased it. But first of all, good day, sir. Even mentioning the word caterpillar steel, you scare. Please no, please no. Anyway, back to actual question.
Listen. Do not discount a caterpillar that's entirely stacked with like 20 rows for each module. So you have, 80 drop seats where you drop it down and open up, and an entire like platoon just like vomits out of the side of a caterpillar. That scene would be glorious and shitty.
Please no. So on the containers, I think Paul's onto something here. The containers, because the containers could easily be a workaround for Outpost. So CIG has said in the past that Outpost will be able to be constructed efficiently with actual construction like the Pioneer and such. And then they were in the past said, well, you can also just bring it with cargo, but it's going to be way bigger. It's going to be less efficient. It's going to be more expensive. I could see that as a great way to realize that potential. Look, you can have the Pioneer or the Galaxy with the construction module, et cetera, et cetera. But if you want to operate off the back of a truck, and you want to do this, this, and this, especially in the early days of your Outpost, you could bring a cargo module that is the power plant. And then you can run off of that, and it's going to cost a fortune to keep it fueled and whatever. It's going to be a pain to get it there. But until you construct the proper Outpost, you can operate off it. I would love to see something like that. That would be player options. That's all I advocate for.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. All right, we've got 3 more questions. Shanks for Giggles asks, maybe a question do we think that when the Idris comes out that we will be able to earn kits in game right away? Access. Do you think we'll be able to earn, like, say, the Idris K kit right away?
I think it might be tied to reputation, maybe with the UE or CDF. I mean, that seems more likely.
Yeah,
because something like that is.
But do you think it would be right away?
A military upgrade to a civilian ship.
Yeah. Do you think it would come out right away though? Like when the Idris comes out, you'll be able to get those kits right away?
It doesn't seem like it now.
Okay. Red J, what do you think?
The Idris K kit is a pile of parts. And the biggest, most important one is the Hurston Dynamics Exodus Laser Beam, which is the size 10 module that you attach to the P.
God bless Hurston Dynamics. Hurston Dynamics, for those of you who don't know, Hurston Dynamics makes the Slayer cannon on the Nova, and they also make the gun on the Storm. So like in my mind, like this is CIG's finally fleshing out. It's like, yeah, you hate Hurston, but they make the best guns in the universe that can a size 5 that can kill an Idris with like 4 shots. Like they somehow are geniuses and be like, how do we destroy an entire universe with a drop of oil? A drop of child's tears. Like, yeah, they're horrible people, but they turn those horrible people, the labor of those horrible practices into absolute weapons of mass destruction. Sorry, go ahead.
So on to Axis's thought of reputation. I could definitely see, first of all, if there isn't one on display on day one, I'm going to be very upset with Hurston.
Yes.
I would love to see one where I'll take a train ride to an exit if I have to, just to go see the thing on display. But I could see them having a reputation tie-in, and it'll be sitting in the store. But the deal is, like, to actually get it, you would have to grind reputation for X number of hours. And it's like, look, it is here, it's available, ... but you've got to earn the privilege to purchase it with UEC and with reputation. And don't forget, the K kit can be purchased with credit or war bond during the big sales. So don't feel like you're pressured into using war bond. You can save up or use credit as well, or you can buy it in game. So I think they'll stick to their commitments to do everything all at once.
I'm just gonna say it. Half Orston asks, "Is there water on Hurston safe to drinking?" Yes, but only if you're in the business district. If you're in Central, the giant tower that looms over everything. That's the only place I would trust water on Hurston. But I agree with you 100%.
Swim in the brown water.
I would honestly kill for a display like for a more like a larger display section in Central, because right now the display section in Central is just like the attritions and different sizes of attritions. But now that we actually have more things like the rocket pods and the Slayer cannon, even just to have like the turret of a Nova and like a breakaway, like we have with the engines of the what is it, the Hercules, or is it the Star Runner in Crusader? It'd be really cool to have like a breakaway of the cannon and how it functions, the bespoke cannon or that kind of stuff. So
The Ares.
no, not the Ares. The Nova, the tank. The tank has a cannon,
Slayer.
a size 5 bespoke tank cannon that's called the Slayer. It's called the Hurston Dynamics Slayer cannon. And for anyone in game knows that cannon is a size 5 that hits like a size 8. it can like 2-tap some ships if you hit it. So like I would, and Hurston has got that. They got that ego that they built a giant replacement for the railgun that they also build, by the way. But they're going to have that giant beam cannon somewhere display, being like, yeah, that's us. That's ours. You love it. Like a showcase of the size 10 Colossus nuke. Yeah, something like that. All right, we have last 2 questions. Odd Noun asks, do you think there will be sufficient diversity in orgs so that one does not take over the verse? I'm going to say yes, because the one org that you will never beat in Star Citizen is the UEE. Because CIG will be able to have infinite resources to throw at them. And for anybody who's worried, take a look at the Bengal carrier in game and note that Bengal carrier wasn't fully functional, because it didn't have squadrons to launch off of the fighter decks. And most of its guns were working, but its shield stuff wasn't working. It didn't have a full fleet with it. Like a fully functional working, even like battle group of the UEE would mop the floor with most player, even the largest player organizations, because CIG also has this thing called they can cheat. There's an old saying from Eve, which is Concord isn't for defense, it's for revenge. And there was a moment in Eve where they had Concord just basically roll into places and just annihilate everyone, like just because they can be invincible. Like CIG can just be like, we're going to cheat. We're going to make all of this fleet invincible and destroy you because you're too powerful. So.
Test is CIG. Excuse me.
Yeah. It's at one point, didn't they test an AI controlled Bengal against 2 or 3 AI Idrises? They may have. We were talking about this the shipbuster railgun in before the stream, but the shipbuster railgun in lore is supposed to 1 or 2 tap a cruiser. So like, good luck,
Good luck, children.
Yeah, like good luck storming the castle, because yeah, you won't be able to infinitely respawn like you do now, and there'll be a lot of other logistics going on. So while I understand the worry that, you might have an Eve situation where one group will become so powerful that they'll overpower everyone, I think like there'll be enough other factors that will limit player security, and CIG will be actively monitoring. And I don't think CIG has qualms about ruining players' day. I don't think they have any problems about taking test and breaking them over the back of their their Bengal carrier fleets because Test got too big for their britches or something. So.
Oh yeah.
If they were like actively camping newbie locations or
Yeah.
something, which I'm not
Yeah.
saying they ever would. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying any group would try that or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like, so. What do you think, Red J? Do you think there's enough sufficient diversity in orgs that not one could take over the verse?
Yes, and also if one group tried to do it, another power block would come in Eve style and attempt to take them out. That's just how human nature is.
Yeah.
Nature of things.
And I know a lot of people are like, I think this definitely comes from that where you're from Eve. So it's important to note that Star Citizen's economy is not Eve. Star Citizen is very much a controlled economy. It is if Eve is like a full capitalist utopia, then Star Citizen is like a social democracy. Because like CIG will always have those strings that they can pull to change the economy if they need to, and they will frequently to encourage players and actions to do specific things. So you'll have the illusion of a completely free market with CIG manipulating everything behind the scenes to ensure that everyone's having fun. So, but what do you think, Access? Do you think we're going to see? Is there enough diversity in orgs that there's not one that's going to take over the verse?
I think the best analogy that about what CIG would do to people like Test or Nova Galactic or these big orgs that think they're going to camp jump points and strategic places is.
We're not saying that they
kind
are.
of what Nick Fury would say.
We're not saying they're actively trying to camp. We know that, but we're just saying that if they did, theoretically, all right. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, theoretically. I'm just saying, basically, the whole ant versus boot philosophy. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah. Damn, my entire org is pointless then. I was going to be a mega capitalist. I'm not saying you can't make a lot of money. And CIG has said that they have no problem with players influencing system economies, but they don't want they will never allow for one organization to control the entire market of like guns for the entire UEE or for the entire game. Because they don't want that to happen. They do want some control over their economy so they can manage the fun. That's the whole point. So, yeah.
Super orgs are also kind of unorganized at a certain level because when you get so big, you get factions. And then when they don't have a unified goal, they tend to fall apart due to factional divisions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just part of psychology.
Yeah. Last question comes from Carlos R72, who asks, the gold pass on current ships will need to contain several aspects. Ship needs physicalization of components, maelstrom, resource management. Do you think they will postpone the gold passes to get everything in gold pass? Will they wait for the test of maelstrom and arena commander like Thorsten told on CitizenCon at CitCon? What do you think, Access? Do you think they're going to wait? Basically, the question is, do you think they're going to wait until everything is done before they start doing gold passes on older ships? Or do you think they're going to do them piecemeal and start testing them individually?
That's really hard to say. I think they might wait to do like a across-the-board gold pass. That's at least what I think, because resources are pretty stretched thin right now,
Yeah. What do you think, Red J?
I think the passes are pretty stretched thin. I agree with Axis. Plain and simple, the backlog. Players complained about the backlog. CIG wants to make that happen. So the focus is on getting these backlog ships actually out the door. I think that's the story of 2024 with ships is the backlog. And a lot of the other stuff, a lot of the teams that support those ships end up working on that too.
Yeah. I will say, yeah, and the other thing to keep in mind that a lot of this stuff, like for instance, master modes, seems to be much more of a plug and play sort of thing. It's much more of a systemic thing rather than having to go back and put them all in all of the ships. But they do have to kind of balance the ships with them, which is why when they add master modes to various ships, they're doing it through like categorization stuff. And we also know how quickly they can do some of the stuff like physicalization of components. The Freelancer got it done in like a couple of months. It's really going to be dependent on various different like requirements for each ship. But I also think the term gold pass is already dead. We haven't heard CIG talk about gold passes in 3 years. So I think the gold pass idea is dead, and because every time it's brought up, CIG like the developers look confused. You'll see the look on the ship designers' faces when they say the gold pass of this. They'll go, "What?" So basically, I think internally the idea of gold pass is dead. But bringing it up to the current standard is still one of those things they want to do. But I agree. I think Freelancer owner in chat, please confirm. The Freelancer doesn't have its components now, but it is going to be in like 3.23 or something like that. It's being actively worked on as of October. So, is it in the game yet? No, but having it being built and being put in game are two different things. So, because I think it got started in September or August. So, and I think it's specifically for the resource management gameplay is why they're adding them in. But yeah, so I think it would also be a waste for CIG to start doing gold passes on ships now, because I know so many people are like, well, the starter ships that we get are terrible. CIG should update them. But my always counter argument is the starter ships are terrible because the game doesn't it just isn't ready for new players really yet. Until the game is at a point where new players should be coming into the verse, which is, when most of the features for ships are in game, that's when they should go back and work on the Aurora. The longer it takes for them to work on the Aurora or the Mustang, the better those ships will be when they actually come out. So.
Patches, it's when they work on an older ship and they bring it up to modern design standards and usability.
Yeah, they basically haven't used the term gold pass. They used it in 1 year in ISC because they were talking about doing it for the Gladius, because the Gladius is in Squadron 42. So, yeah. So what's their excuse for the Reliant? That thing is practically coded in COBOL. Because their excuse for the Reliant is they forgore. People don't remember that those ships exist. Starter ships should be terrible to make. You want to get rid of that Aurora ASAP. Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's the last one. Thank you to Red J and to Axis for coming in to talk about the last Captain's Table of the year. The next one may or may not be in the first week of the year. It depends, because I also have I've got to go to a funeral. So let me see exactly when that is. That would be the 2nd. I'm almost certainly not going to do it on the 2nd.
Wow, we've hit nearly 5 million citizens.
Yeah, it's almost 5 million citizens. We're and that, to be fair, those citizens are sign up on the website, not accounts on website, right. not game stuff, but yeah. 6th. Yeah, I'm almost certainly not going to be streaming on the 6th because my birthday is the 7th. So, and I won't be streaming on the 13th because I'll be out of town. So yeah, the 20th may be the next time we have a Captain's Table. We'll have some other stuff putting up there, but thank you again for hanging out. Hope you all make sure to check out our guests. Access 0096 on Twitch and YouTube, Red J on YouTube, and of course, if you enjoy this, hit that like button. Make sure you follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/TheAstroPub, and youtube.com/TheAstroPubLive. Subscribe for us there, and as always, want to hear your thoughts down below. And of course, if you're listening to the podcast, make sure you follow us on the podcast. I don't know what you do in podcasts. Subscribe or follow or whatever for the audio format. I know I haven't put these up in a while, but I'll be dropping them in pretty quickly. So hopefully you enjoy that, and I promise I'll be more consistent going forward. It's just been a weird sort of couple of months for me. Thank you again for watching. Thank you for hanging out, and have a happy new year. And like I say every time, if I don't see you again soon, hope to see you someday in the black. Of course, I hit the wrong button.